Good afternoon, Sarah. How's your day been
Uh-huh.
so far?
Not too bad, not too bad. What about yourself?
Busy. We're hitting the end of semester now, so things are getting intense, as you would remember what the end of semester looks like.
Yep,
Thank you.
yep.
Thank you so much for doing this. Before we get underway, can you just tell me about the organization you work for? Because it sounds fascinating.
So at the moment I'm working at Arab, and they're a really great company to work for. If anyone, I'm not paid to say this, by the way, but if they want to sponsor me, they can. They're actually a really great company to work for if any of the students ever get the chance. They're a multinational engineering um, company, but they do a lot of other things as well. A lot of sustainable development work. And I work in the bids team. So in construction and engineering, when someone wants something built, road, house, anything, basically, oh, sorry, not a house, a building, basically what they have to do is send out a tender. So the engineers and the builders will apply and say, this is what we can offer. And they need someone to write those. And then the company that is building the infrastructure will assess, and then that's how you can win a job. So I am in the team that writes those tenders and bids. So it's not exactly a media company that I work for anymore, but I have done in the past. But it's still writing. It's just a bit more commercial focused, I guess.
It's really interesting when I talk to different graduates. They've all got media roles, but they're actually seldom working for media companies because media is
Mm.
so pervasive now that people can find themselves working in all kinds of industries.
Yeah, I think that also the good thing about, because I did a media communications degree, it's nice and broad. And I think that there's an advantage to that because you can pick a lot of careers and you still have that background behind you that pays off for those careers. It's not just stuck to one thing like accounting. No offense to the accountants out there.
There will be no accountants watching this, so you're
Good.
completely fine. It's actually interesting. I had a look through my LinkedIn the other day, and I've got like 9 connections at Arup.
Oh,
Yeah, so a lot of our students actually wind up working there. After this call, I'll share with you some of the contacts because there's other
yeah,
people
what do it
working in the
was.
yeah in different parts of the world, including a couple in the UK, I think, as well.
There you go. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so it's
cool.
it's really really quite a good employer for our graduates.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting to hear that the writing skills are so important in an area where you may not necessarily think that writing would be important.
Yeah, 100%. I think like when I was at uni, I originally wanted to work in TV, and then towards the end of my degree, I switched up and wanted to write in news. And then I had that goal for a while, and then I thought, oh, this might be a bit too depressing for me. The state of the world sometimes isn't great.
Yeah.
Um, and but I didn't know where I wanted to go after that. But your career just kind of takes you places that you didn't even expect. I got into um, construction, writing about the construction and design industry before this job, which was totally random. I just kind of got offered a job and took it, and really started to enjoy it. It was a field I'd never been involved in before, but it was super interesting to me. And then you get offered jobs in places and it just kind of takes you somewhere. So I think, yeah, for your students, like if they're thinking about what they want to do, go for it. But if you're not sure, I think don't stress either, like take opportunities, and things just kind of move in places that you wouldn't expect.
It's kind of funny. I was having dinner with some former students the other night, and one thing that we're beginning to realize is nothing's ever wasted. No matter what job you have, even if you don't particularly love it, you'll pick up skills that you're going to use for the next job, and it all just kind of compounds.
Yeah, definitely. I had jobs that I won't say who, but a couple of jobs that weren't that amazing, but I still used them to take advantage of doing different things that were more catered to what I wanted to do in the future, like um, writing different things for the company that wasn't exactly maybe my my role, but I just took on side things through that company, or met people. I think for probably a lot of your students, they're introverts, and I am an introvert. But I know people always tell students, I remember people always saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know, make connections, talk to everyone. And I hate that advice because I'm not an extrovert, but it is true. But I think even if you're not like a person who wants to go to events and just chat to someone you don't even know, you can just talk to people that you work with or who you do little things with and just make a good impression with them. And that can lead to other opportunities too. So I think even if there's something that for me wasn't the dream job, I met people through those jobs who then advocated for me and helped me move into other jobs that I did were more what I wanted to do.
As a fellow introvert, I completely hear you there. It is a tough thing, and it is a common thing in media and comms. It is very much who you know. But I had someone teach me about networking years and years ago, and they said that the secret to networking is just go in genuinely interested in what someone has to say. Because if you go in with an angle and you're assuming that you're going to get something out of it, people can smell that a mile off.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that for sure. Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. Like once you go into, and I'm finding it actually with these interviews, I'm learning stuff all the time, and I'm like genuinely interested in where people have gone and what they're doing, and this is networking. So I think, yeah, understanding that it can work for introverts as well is probably quite important. So
Definitely.
so coming out of uni, so where did you start out of uni? Your first position?
I remember it taking a while for me to get a job, which is probably a reality to prep yourself for, like for your students. Maybe they'll get a job quick, which is amazing, but it can take a little while. Um, and it depends on the job market at the time. It did take me a little while. And then I got a job at a publishing company who do basically the content in the newspaper that isn't the news. So all your um, TV program schedules. I don't know if they even do those anymore, but um, they do the racing pages,
Oh yeah.
puzzles, all that kind of stuff. So I started there doing the TV pages. Um, and on the side, I did some other things. I think one thing also to think about is taking advantage from every role, but also not letting yourself be taken advantage of. I think like at that time, because I was new in the field and you're young, and even now, like 10, 15 years later, people in this field especially will ask you to do work for free.
Yeah.
Um, and if you want to do it, I think go for it, but also be conscious that don't let people take advantage of you just because we're creatives and they think it's okay to ask creatives to do things for free.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things I did during those first like 5 years out of uni was for free, but I was getting something out of it as well. So I would do like outside of the full-time job I had, I would do like Fringe Festival write-ups. I don't know if the Fringe Festival's still around, but
It is, yeah,
it
it
is.
is and isn't. It tends
Yeah.
to oscillate. The festival scene at the moment's dying a bit more
Yeah, I
broadly.
think COVID maybe killed it a bit, but things like that, they would ask for people to review, but in exchange you would get a free ticket to a show.
Yep.
And so I got to learn and write and have those reviews published, but also got something out of it. I got to go to a show and I was still learning as well. And I would do other things like community radio, like Sin Radio and
Oh yeah.
Channel 31, which is free, but it's a community student group, and I learned so much from it. What else did I do? A lot of things where we weren't necessarily paid, but I would learn a lot. So it's not necessarily just writing something for someone and them going thank you and taking it, and you've sort of not got anything from it. So anyway, that's a bit of a side quest that I just started talking about, but I think that's a key one, because a lot of people will ask you to just do everything for free. So I worked there for a while, and then I moved on to another publishing company. They publish magazines, and I learned a lot through there. So I started out actually just doing call center stuff for them, calling up their subscribers and seeing if they wanted to renew their subscriptions, which was not at all in my envisioned career path. But I needed something different, and I just took it. And then through that, they realized that I could write and I had that background, and they put me on a part-time role in the content area. And then I took on full-time, and then I got into a bit of editing through there, and I gained some really great experience and learnt a lot in that job. And then through there, I got into a bit of marketing for a bit. It was good, but not crazy for me. And then I got another job in marketing in a different field, and then now I'm at Arup. So yeah, like your career just changes as you go through, and I think I could have never predicted where I would have ended up at
But
each of those roles.
it's a good balance of experience. So you've zigzagged through various creative and non-creative roles. It's something I actually see a lot with graduates, that they don't tend to stay in one place too long, but they develop, what we now call portfolio careers, where you just pick up a little bit here and there. I also love the advice you gave about being picky about free labor, because everybody wants to use media graduates now, particularly in social media. Everyone wants free social media management.
It's hard too, because you want the experience, and particularly if it's, I think big companies who do it, they are the worst because they're the ones that can afford it, but they have the most advantage in that you want that company on your resume. So, I mean, it's up to the individual. If you think it's an advantage for you, do it, but don't feel like, I think you shouldn't feel like you have to do things for free all the time to get ahead. Because it's it's only doing yourself a disservice later, because they'll still expect it from people later as you progress in your career as well. I think the other thing actually that was really good for me and was free, but I got a lot out of it, was I did an internship at The Age, which was through my course. And that was great. I made some connections there just through chatting, not any crazy extrovert stuff. And also learnt a lot. And through that, I had a few things published in the mag and on the website, which looks great on your resume. So I guess that's another example of doing stuff for free, but you're getting so much out of it. And it gave me a really good taste for real work and what's involved in it and what it takes as well.
So you mentioned doing the internship through the course. How did you find the course as a whole? Like, did you think it prepared you well for work, or there gaps that you think we should have done better?
It's a hard question. I think yes. I think different classes, my answer would be different. I think some classes were realistic, and it's hard in our industry because the media 5 years ago to now means something totally different. It's such a changing industry. So I think I remember some classes were very realistic about that, and saying you need to be, future focused, prepare for that and have those different skills. Other classes perhaps were a bit more stagnant thinking, but I'm sure that was a while ago. So I'm sure they're all a bit more future digital focused now, hopefully.
No, not really. No,
not really.
We still have some stagnation. Still have people who think that the 80s were the best time in the world and want to go back there, but that's pretty standard. It's good to hear. I mean, it is something we're always trying to do. We're always trying to improve, and I think we're never going to be able to create perfect graduates because it's a university, not actually the real world. But it's good to know we're kind of on the right track. So in terms of your current role, What's a typical day look like for you? So you get up in the morning, you go into work. Well, what do you do? What's the day look like?
Um, well, I think one thing now is that there's a lot of agile working. So for me, I work 2-ish days in the office at the moment and 3 at home. Every company is different. Some of my friends are 5 days in the office. Some of them are whatever they want. So the flexibility is a nice thing that we have now after COVID. In terms of my actual work, it's a lot of forward thinking of what jobs will be coming up. So we follow a lot of what the government is planning, and looking at how we can get ready to bid for those jobs and have um, the best proposition for that work. So we do a lot of work thinking about that. And then once the bids actually land, so they've sent us what they want in terms of, they'll ask about what staff we'll put forward for the job, what project experience we have. So I'll write that stuff up. I'll write custom things about each staff member and what they offer for that particular job, and write about the projects that we've done previously that are similar and show our experience. So in that sense, it's not exactly creative writing, but it is still writing, which, ticks that box for me. And then what else do we do? So we write that stuff and submit those tenders. And outside of that, it's talking to the engineers at the company, because often they'll have those connections with clients or architects who we'll work with as well, and talking to them about what work's coming up and how we can prepare for that kind of influx of bids that they'll be asking for. So it's a little bit of writing, a little bit of talking, a little bit of preparing. Yeah,
So planning is a huge part of what you do.
in this role, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Have you had to learn a bit of engineering speak in order to do your job?
Yeah, which is actually something I really love about this job, because Arup have engineers in every space, but they also have a lot of experts in like things like lighting and sustainability, and getting Green Star accreditations on buildings and things like that. And I've had to learn a lot in this industry, but I think I love working with people who are way smarter than me, because I learn so much from them. So that's been a really awesome thing about my role, is learning so much. And often I'll come home and tell my partner or my family about what I learned that day. And to them, it's not even relevant at all to my job, but it's so interesting to me. And I think it goes back to what you were saying before about having that curiosity. Wherever you end up in your career, being curious is key, I think, to a lot of the roles that your students will end up in. You just have to want to know about things, whatever it may be. I think that's key to being successful. When I started in writing in the design and architecture niche, I just wanted to know how they work, how they tick, how they know where to put colors and all that kind of stuff. And I did a lot of interviews in that role. So interviewing designers, and having that curiosity is what gets you the good information in order to write up pieces and articles. So I think having that curiosity is key.
And I think it actually makes you more employable because employers universally want someone who's going to learn on the job, and having that curiosity is going to be a big part of that,
Yeah, for sure. You got to be nosy.
which is always good.
Yeah,
So it sounds like you work with a pretty diverse team.
yeah,
Is
very.
being a good team player important in what you do?
Depends on the role. Oh, I mean, yes, always, always. And I think that also goes back to your networking, like having good rapport with your co-workers, even if you're not directly working with them, has been key to having a progressive career. Um, lots of the roles I've been in have been pretty autonomous. I guess in a sense of, if you're writing, it's just you. But there's always parts where you have to work as a team. Whether it's like in the publishing role, we would work with the editors and the designers to go back and forth to get the mags going out. And in this role now, it's going back and forth with the engineers and talking to them and getting info that then we work on and then feed back to them. So yeah, always, even if you're in a role that's autonomous, you've got to be a bit of a team player as well.
It's a loaded question because as we talk now, the students are doing a big group project, which they of course hate.
Yes.
So um, it's just a theme that we keep hearing. It's always about group work once you graduate. So it's worthwhile just making that point.
Yeah, and there's always going to be the slackers who don't do anything, even
Yep.
when you are working. So
Yep, that is true. We're actually in this unit, we're working on strategies to deal with the slackers, and
oh, good. Yeah,
like
that'll help.
it's interesting because it is the reality of working life. So we talked before about being future focused, and in this unit we do try to be a little bit future focused. So we talk a lot about AI. Are you finding AI having an impact on your role?
Uh, not so much at the moment. It has been brought up a lot. It's definitely something that at Arup they're a pretty future focused company. So they do a lot of work around it and looking at how it can benefit the industry. For my role specifically, not at the moment. I have had things where I've written them, and then for people who don't necessarily know that I have a writing background, and they've said, "Wow, that's good. Did ChatGPT write it?"
Yeah.
Which I grin and bear and is very offensive to me, but maybe it's a compliment. I'm not sure. And people do often suggest, "Oh yeah, just get ChatGPT to do that." And as a writer, you do take offense and go, "Oh, well, that's what I'm for." But it is the reality that, we have to work out how to stand separate from AI, I think. AI is great, and I'm no expert in it at all. Absolutely not enough of an idea about it, but I think you've got to have something that you can offer that AI doesn't, because I guess for every industry, it threatens to take your job in a sense. So
Yeah, I completely agree. But I was just thinking in your role in particular, when you've got like multi-million-dollar tenders resting on what you do, you actually need a human in the loop to make sure that the information going out is correct, to make sure you haven't misrepresented anything. And I think in a lot of ways, your job is probably safer than most from AI.
yeah, that's true. And I guess because a lot of the things that we write about for AI, as far as my understanding is, it grabs stuff from existing content on the internet, and a lot of the stuff that we work with and write is insider information, I guess, or
Yeah.
like confidential information on what our company can offer, and what the client wants. So yeah, in a way, you're right. I think hopefully AI won't be coming for my job because it doesn't know all the stuff I know.
And because of the commercial and confidence stuff, it can't. So
Yeah.
that's actually really cool. I hadn't really considered that because, as educators, we're looking at AI extensively now and thinking about how it could impact the careers of our graduates. And I hadn't really thought about it, but the more specialized your writing is, the less of an impact it's going to have.
Yeah, very true. Either the more, well, I guess I was going to say, even if you're also a very creative writer, maybe you're safe. But I guess AI can get pretty creative. But then it makes a lot of mistakes too. So I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think like in strictly creative writing, it's probably easier for AI because the mistakes don't matter as much. But because you're
True.
dealing in such a high stakes environment, you don't want to outsource to something that is acknowledged to make mistakes like that. That's actually a really interesting kind of sideline.
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
So if you're in a position to hire now, like if you were looking to fill a role to work with you, what would you look for in a graduate?
Well, Arup actually does, and again, I'm not getting paid for this, but Arup does take on a lot of graduates, more so in the engineering space. But in our team, I guess if we were to have graduates, it would be that the curiosity, I think, is very key. If you were to come into this role and not be open to, even if you were an expert in writing bids, if you didn't have a curiosity to understand all the stuff that our specialists offer in their roles, it wouldn't work. So I think organisation is key, and being able to, which is difficult, work on something currently, but also be thinking about what's coming next.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I'm the best multitasker in the world, but there are a lot of tools that you can use, and your students probably across all the tech way more than me now, but there's so many tech tools that you can use to keep that organization. So things like that. And yeah, I think the curiosity is the main thing. Curiosity and like an interest in always learning and getting better at what you want to do. I think it doesn't matter necessarily where you start from, but if you're asking questions and wanting to improve what you know and do better, I think that's the main thing.
The looking forward while working on a project, I think, is actually really interesting. How how long a time horizon would you have to work with? Like, are you looking a month ahead, 2 months ahead, 3 months ahead?
Uh, It depends. Really, lots of the jobs we're looking at are like can be 5 years down the line.
Yeah.
Things with government projects, but it's more, obviously it's not confirmed work, but things like that, it might be way down the line. So you're not working on it yet, you're not preparing, but you have that in the back of your mind that it's coming up. For things where you actually start working on it, it could be 6 months down the line. I know I do more of the buildings projects, but so sports stadiums, things like that, office buildings. But for the team members who do a lot of rail projects and road projects, that can be a year of planning, and you've got to engage with other teams potentially. If there's something that we can't offer, we might partner with another team, another company, and create like a consortia. Or sometimes you've got a team with an architect, so it's thinking about which architects are best suited. So yeah, it just depends, but it can be a long time in advance.
That's actually really useful to know, because I think one of the things we don't do well at university is give people that sort of looking ahead focus, because we work in semesters, the most people are really looking ahead is probably 3 or 4 weeks to their next assignment is due, and then they'll do it the night before anyway.
Yeah.
I'm guessing getting things done the night before doesn't work in your industry, or does it happen pretty frequently?
Ideally, it doesn't. But it can, yeah, no matter how old people get, there'll be still people who do it the night before. I try not to be that person. No, it just depends, and especially on what industry you're in. Sometimes you can't help it. You get bogged down with things, and then you've got a deadline that you need to reach. And yeah, I was pretty good at uni. I think I planned most things in advance, but there were some things I remember staying up till 1 a.m. pumping out the essays and whatever. So um, I think going into your full-time work, it is hard to break that and to give yourself deadlines along the way before you have your actual deadline.
I mean, that was kind of something that we talked about before we started recording today, that transition from uni into full-time work, being stuck in a place for 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, it does suck.
Yeah, it was a struggle. I think it was a good few months of adjustment. Um, it is a shock to the system to be sitting in an office, which probably most of your students will end up doing. and looking at a computer for that long and getting up early every day, which I know happens with the uni schedule, but then you also had days where you didn't have a lecture till 3 p.m. And you got to sleep in. So I drank a lot of Red Bull at that time and then transitioned into coffee, a lot of coffee, but it is hard for a little bit. But you get used to it after a few months. It is a tricky transition.
Yeah, you do have to adapt. So final question, what do you wish you would have learned as a student that you know now?
That is a hard question. Oh gosh, I think maybe it's the networking thing that I mentioned. I think, it's really hard to work in an industry where networking is, and I mean any industry, networking is important. But also understanding that networking doesn't necessarily mean you have to be crazy extroverted and going to every event. If you are extroverted, that's your advantage. So take it and do that. But as an introvert, you just got to try a little bit and you'll be fine. I think that's the key thing I've learned.
And the good thing is, and I think it's really salient advice for the students today, because you can practice networking at uni.
Yeah.
In a really low stakes environment. It's just talking to your classmates, it's doing some group work, talking to your lecturers and things like that. Because if it doesn't work out there, it doesn't matter. But each time you do it, it gets a little bit easier.
That's it. And also the networking thing doesn't have to be talking to CEOs or directors. To be honest, most of my jobs have come through, and I did freelancing for a bit, so that was definitely through friends I'd made at uni and friends I'd made in my job who were on the same level as me, but they might have met someone who they've been told has a few articles they want written, and my friend doesn't have time, but she passes them on to me. So it doesn't, if you're happy to talk to big wigs, go for it, but it's also use your network of people on your level and you share with them. I've passed on a lot of jobs to my friends in the industry and it goes back and forth. And also using recruiters, I think, is a great thing. I think in uni, I didn't know what recruiters really did. I thought I had to pay them or it was just for, big wigs. But recruiters are really great. They get paid to get you a job and not paid by you. So I've actually got a few jobs through recruiters because they want to get you a job that you will stay in because then they get paid. So they've been really helpful in finding jobs when I couldn't find jobs through my networks as well.
Fantastic. That is a great piece of advice, and one that I don't think we've ever had in one of these interviews before.
That's
so
good.
It's a nice little bit of additional info for the students. Well, I know you've taken your lunch out today to talk to us, so thank
No
you
worries.
so much for that. And I've got to say, it's been fantastic. Love catching up with you again.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
The advice you've given here is absolute gold.
Awesome. Good. I hope it helps the students and they'll be fine. Just see where your career takes you and you'll get somewhere.
Cool. Well, thank you again so much, and I'll end the recording now, but thank you so much.
Pleasure.